All right, so thank you guys so much for taking time out of your evening to attend this wonderful presentation. Um, it's really important that parents and caregivers have a good understanding of child development, what red flags they should be keeping an eye out for, and what to do if you have questions and concerns. Next slide. So I'll just go over just kind of the bare bones basics of child development that really every parent and caregiver should feel comfortable understanding. The biggest thing that everyone needs to understand is how important early childhood development is. 80% of a child's brain develops by the time they reach the age of 3. So you're really setting the most important foundations for health and success in those first 3 years of a child's life. Also, every child develops at their own rate. It is completely normal for children to have their own strengths and areas where they need help developing. It's just how kids are. It's how people are. We always say it takes all kinds, and that starts at the very beginning of life. If you see a child having, maybe struggling in fine motor development, one of the best things you can do is use their own interests to encourage and engage participation in some of those activities. For example, a child, may not be interested in coloring, but they may be really interested in some other fine motor activities, which might include stringing pipe cleaners through a colander, or just putting things in boxes and slots and that kind of stuff. And you can always use their own interests to really engage them. So if they're interested in trains or cars or animals or princesses, whatever it is, you can find activities out there that focus on different areas of development, and they'll be really excited to participate. And along those lines, every child is different. When I was an infant toddler teacher, it was pretty much every single second time parent came to me and said, is this normal? My first child didn't start crawling until they were like 10 months old, and all of a sudden, child number 2 is all over the place and they're barely 6 months old. And I'd have to say, yes, that's completely normal. And it's going to throw you off guard. So I learned pretty quickly to prepare parents for that and say, start maybe proofing earlier this time, because I can see how active your second one is, and they're going to be into everything real quick. And every child will have different strengths, needs, and interests, and it's fun and challenging figuring that out for every child. It's also important to understand that just because a child doesn't meet a particular milestone exactly on time, it doesn't mean that there's a delay. You have to look at the whole picture of child development. A child may not start, crawling until they're 10 months old, and then, they may not start walking until closer to 18 months old. That happens, and you have to look at, is their speech developing? Is there, are they developing those fine motor skills? Do they seem to be healthy and happy, in their social, emotional lives as well? And, you have to kind of reflect, what activities are you providing the child to help them meet milestones. Tummy time is so important for those really small infants, and there are ways that you can make tummy time, really engaging and not such a, what I used to call a cry fest. When I was an infant teacher, I would carry kids around, in kind of that football hold, where their head would be supported in my hand, and their tummies would be on my arm. That counts as tummy time. It's all about getting in that position so the child can stretch out and, develop those muscles. I would put them on my thigh so they would be elevated and they could, see and engage the other kids. The older infants would come up and, peek around and play peekaboo with them, and, just, kind of engage that way. So bringing kids off the floor for tummy time can really help make it less of a struggle. And then also just really doing tummy time very consistently. I had a lot of parents who would say, well, my kid cries during tummy time, so we really just don't do it. And I'd have to say, do it for a couple minutes a day. And if you keep doing it consistently and you keep providing them other ways of doing tummy time, they're eventually going to get the hang of it and really enjoy it. Because they'll start to learn how to move their arms and legs, and they'll start to learn how to crawl. And, that kind of development really brings a lot of joy to tummy time. And then also, talking and reading and singing with your children is of the utmost importance. That's really where those language and literacy skills come from. So I always tell parents, you should be talking a lot during the day, especially during those everyday routines. That's really where the magic of development happens. At the daycare, it was, diaper time, nap time, and, playtime and meal times. And during those routines, that was our entire day. So if I wasn't taking advantage of those times, I wasn't being a very good infant teacher. And so, if you think about it, all that time you spend, changing diapers, you can talk about, the difference between wet and dry. Say, Johnny, your diaper's wet right now. You've got a dirty diaper. We need to get you clean. You need a good, clean, dry diaper. And you're talking about opposites. Experts say that it takes between like 70 and 100 times for a child to really understand new vocabulary. Think about how quickly they're going to understand clean and dirty and wet and dry if you start talking about it a majority of the time when you're changing those diapers. When I lifted the kids, legs and butt in the air, I would say, your legs are in the air. I'm picking your legs up. Your legs are up. And when I put them down, I would say, your legs are down. So, I had, 9-month-olds when I said, up, they would, lift their leg up or point up because, they had been exposed to those words so many times. And then reading and singing are just, really important ways to really add richer vocabulary and a good understanding of literacy it really introduces a lot of those skills to your child, as well as playing pretend. Playing pretend is such a rich environment for children. That's the basis for social emotional learning. If they're caring for their stuffed animals or their baby dolls, if they're learning how to take care of their trucks, that there's just so much social emotional that goes into that, that it's just so important. then that's also the basis. You can add language and literacy skills to that. If a child likes to pretend to cook, that's a really easy way to introduce, hey, why don't we throw a party? And then you have to think about, well, what do we need for a party? Well, you need to write invitations to everyone. Let's write invitations to mommy and daddy and whoever else might live with us, as well as your favorite stuffed animal. And all of a sudden you've got the kid writing and coloring. And then you can talk about sequences. First we need to decorate, and then second we need to cook the food, and third everyone's going to come in and have fun. So you're really teaching planning skills. And then also playing pretend is really foundational to math and science, because so much of math and science you don't get those concrete examples. You might have manipulatives, you might be able to do a science experiment here or there, but a lot of it is theoretical. And so if you're encouraging your child to play pretend, they learn how to think theoretically, which is always, I love talking about that because it's like magic. And then also, if your child is not meeting a milestone, ask yourself, are you a rescuer? So what I mean by rescuer is, do you intervene every time your child struggles? I had a parent, her child, seemed to be hitting every single milestone except those physical milestones. He didn't turn over, he didn't pull up, he wasn't really interested in crawling, and it took him a really long time to walk. And pretty much at every physical milestone, I had to ask her, I had to say, hey mom, like what's going on here? And so I learned that, anytime her child wanted to turn over and he started to cry because he couldn't figure out how to turn over, she would go over and turn him over. And then when he wanted to be on his back, she would turn him on his back. Well, if you're doing that for your child, they're not learning how to flip over, which then he wasn't getting enough tummy time. So then it took him longer to crawl. And then because he was struggling to pull up, she would help him pull up. So he wasn't developing those muscles. And then it took him longer to put it all together so he could learn how to walk. And so there was nothing physically wrong with them. It's just mom was a rescuer, and we had to scale that back and give him some activities so he could catch up. And it's difficult. There were so many times when I was in my infant room and I so wanted to help the child, because they were, they were struggling, and it's our instinct to want to help. They're babies, and there are babies, and we want to be there for them. But the best way we can be there for them is to really encourage them through those moments rather than completely solve the problem for them. So when you're in those moments, you can, provide encouragement for them and say, I know it's so hard to struggle, but you're doing a great job. Let's keep trying. And then also model problem solving, say, wow, this is really frustrating for me. This thing is stuck in the other thing. And, now I'm frustrated, what am I going to do about it? And you talk them through it. So that really provides them a lot of, what they need to learn how to struggle. And so, I can see, we've moved to the next slide. One of the best things you can do to learn about child development, just like Teresa said, or I think it was Teresa who talked about the CDC milestone app. It's magical. It really keeps you on track and will tell you if how concerned you should be about each red flag. So I highly recommend every parent, as soon as you have your baby, to download this app. It has helped me catch, developmental struggles with children. And one of the things that I love best about it is it connects you to resources. So if you have questions, it'll direct you to Ohio Early Intervention, or whoever's most appropriate for you, or it'll give you tips to talk to your pediatrician. So it's a really great app. Next slide.
Sorry, Morgan, I'm trying to go to the next slide. I don't know why my...
Oh, no problem.
The keys is not... Oh. There.
Perfect. So there are, as much as a child may have their own strengths and weaknesses, and need some help, but it's not really a delay, there are a few red flags that you should be concerned about, and you should take time to talk to your pediatrician or reach out to Ohio Early Intervention. And those red flags are right here. Poor social interaction, that might be your child isn't making eye contact or smiling. They don't seem to have any interest, or they don't have the ability to participate in cooperative play. And if they're not babbling by 9 months, give or take, a couple weeks, if they don't have any clear words by 18 months or no simple sentences by age 3, you really need to contact someone. Any kind of lack of response to auditory or visual stimuli is concern. Anytime a child goes from having skills and then if they suddenly disappear, for example, my brother, when he was a baby, he was basically walking at a year old, and then he just stopped one day. And he was just crawling around. Well, it turned out he had something going on in his hip. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he needed surgery. And so, luckily my parents, it took a few days, but they were like, oh my gosh, he's not, running around like he was a couple days ago. And so they were on top of it, and, they got him the help that he needed. And then also, anytime you have a strong concern, you should reach out. Pediatricians and other child development experts might say, oh, wait, don't worry about it. We'll look at this, we'll look at that. But if it's still nagging at you, just know you're the expert. You're the one who can say for sure whether or not something is wrong. So, reach out if you have that concern. And, like it says here, a single red flag does not necessarily indicate a delay, but when in doubt, get help. Like we said, the 80% of a child's brain is developed by the age of 3. There's no harm in reaching out for help. But, there's a lot of harm if you wait too long. The earlier we can get in there, the better. So what do you do if you see one of these red flags? Next slide. You reach out to Ohio Early Intervention. And so what is that? Early intervention works with families with children birth to age 3 who have developmental delays or disabilities so they can have the best possible start in life. Early intervention professionals work with the child's family to identify strengths and needs and address concerns as early as possible. Every eligible family in EI has a local EI team that consists of the family, the service coordinator, and service providers. Your EI team will work with you to develop an individualized family service plan, which is essentially an IEP just for children under the age of 3, for the services that will support your child's development. Services are provided where families live, play, and spend their day. Although I should say currently most of our services are being held virtually. But for early intervention, it's really about providing the services that are needed to help address that individualized family service plan. So if we feel like we can't provide services virtually, we will figure out a way to safely provide services in person. But like I said, most of them are occurring virtually right now. And actually our early intervention providers have found that it's actually been really effective for a lot of parents because they've had to up their communication skills and really help coach the parents. Because the way that early intervention works is, you know, like I said, you're the expert. So we're just there to help support you be the best parent you can be. So, we're providing activities and everything, but you're going to be the one who continues it after we leave. So it's really all about those coaching skills. And, developmental experts will really help with determining that family service plan, and then also determining how we reach those goals. Anyone can and should refer a family to EI if they have concerns about a child experiencing a possible delay. There's no need to wait and see, as eligibility for early intervention is not based on income, and there's no cost to determine eligibility. So, if you give us a call, we will do that screening with you at no cost to the family. And most of our services are provided at no cost to the family, or we work really hard with your insurance providers to make sure that everything is covered. Next slide. So who can be referred to early intervention? Really, it's any child who has a suspected delay in development. Your pediatrician can provide a medical diagnosis that qualifies them, or if you have questions about your child's development. A child has to be referred before they reach the age of 3, though. And again, I want to emphasize our services are not income-based. And then Andrea, we could actually skip the home visiting. And then we'll just go straight to how to make a referral, and then I'll answer questions. Perfect. So I can provide all of this information in the chat as well, but the best way to refer yourself is to go to our website and fill out the referral form. And just provide as much information as possible, and our wonderful central intake staff will get you connected to a early intervention provider who can help answer some of those developmental questions. And then if you have any questions, our phone numbers are, go to that wonderful central intake staff who can really talk in depth about our services as well. Although right now I'll open it up to questions so I can hopefully answer some of your questions.